Hi friends, I'm Nicholas Acciani. Let's talk backstage. In this video, I want to talk about imperial units of measurement in carpentry, specifically how the US uses those units of measurement. So first off, I say imperial units of measurement, and that's not entirely correct. The metric system is used commonly throughout the world, and that's super easy to figure out because it's all in tens. You have a meter, and then you have a centimeter, which is a hundredth of a meter, and a millimeters, which is even smaller of that, but they're all down in tens or hundreds, and it's very easy to figure out. So now, to be different, in the US, we use the United States customary units. It was formalized in the US in 1832, a few years after the imperial units were formalized in the UK. And the reason that those units seem so familiar, you might want to go watch Hamilton and catch up on your United States American history and notice that we used to be a part of the UK until we first became a baby country. And now we are the United States. And we have our own system of measurement here because we have to do everything different and everything ourselves. And it can be very frustrating, but this is what we have to use. So we have a yard, which is just slightly smaller than a meter. And a yard for us is equivalent to 3 feet. If we're thinking and specifically in what we're using when we're building, even a yard is too big. We don't really measure stuff in yards when we're building stuff. We're measuring it in feet and inches. And 1 foot is equivalent to 12 inches. And that is something that you need to know when you are building in the US or anywhere that uses imperial units. Now, an inch can be broken down even smaller, but instead of having a completely different measurement, it's still an inch, it's just a fraction of an inch. So we get into a half an inch, a quarter of an inch, an eighth of an inch, a 16th of an inch. If we're really getting specific, we can get into 1/32nd of an inch or 1/64th of an inch. And if you get even smaller than that, you are insane and crazy. Really, honestly, when we're building, and especially when we're building with lumber, a 16th of an inch is about as small as we're gonna go, especially in theater. After that, we're getting into too small of a difference to make a difference. Now, all of these units, these linear units, is like measuring one line. Now let's talk about squaring these units. This is usually talking about like square footage. I'm sure you might have heard that term. A square foot means it is a square that is 1 foot by 1 foot. And that area inside of that square is 1 square foot. Now you can have square yards, you can have square inches. To get the square footage, you need to multiply the length times the width. Whether you want to call this length and this width and that length, or height versus width, however you want to call it, it's this dimension versus this dimension, horizontal versus vertical. And then you can go even further and go into cubic feet and cubic inches, which you take that square and then you give it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more sides. So it's a 6-sided square like a die. And that is your cubic feet because you are now thinking in 3 dimensions rather than just 2. This times this times this. That's a lot. Most of the time when I'm building and working in theatrical carpentry, I'm not worried about square footage or cubic feet. When I'm talking in painting and as a scenic painter, I will think in square footage because I need to know how many square feet can this gallon of paint cover. And that's a whole different thing. And usually I kind of just eyeball that and I kind of know, all right, this gallon of paint is going to cover like these 6 flats because math isn't always my friend. And speaking of math, let's talk about the math that you need when you are building flats and platforms. If it is an 8-foot piece and you need to subtract 1.5 inches from that 8-foot piece to get the right dimension, what is that going to be? So if you need to subtract inches from feet, you can convert those feet into inches by multiplying it by 12. So 8 feet is 96 inches minus 1.5 inches. 96 minus an inch is 95, minus half an inch is 94.5. So we know it's 94.5 inches. But if we are thinking in feet and inches and we want to keep it in feet and inches, what I do, this is how my brain just needs to work visually and it might help you. I have 8 feet and I know I have to subtract 1.5 inches. 8 feet is equivalent to 7 feet 12 inches, right? Because 12 inches is a foot. So now I know 7 feet is going to be the number I keep as the feet part of this subtracted number. Now I have 12 and I can subtract 1.5 inches from 12. 12 minus 1 is 11. 11 minus a half is 10.5. So now I take that 7 that I put over here and I put that in front of my 10.5, and 8 feet minus 1.5 inches is 7 feet 10.5 inches. So when you're subtracting a fraction number like 1.5 inches from a whole number like 12, you subtract that whole number of that fraction number, so 1, from the whole number, and then you subtract the fractions. Subtract whole numbers first, then the fractions. That might have been confusing. I hope it wasn't. I hope you guys learned something. And if you have other ways to add and subtract fractions that might be easier than what I explained it here, because that is how my brain works, then go ahead and leave a comment below and let me know. All right, I'll see you next time. Bye, friends. These videos are made for educational purposes. Hopefully you learn something or reinforce something you may already know. Now, this is just one way to do this, and there may be other ways to do what I've explained in this video, and I would love to hear about those ways in the comments. Just remember to be kind as you share your own experiences and expertise on the subject. And if you like this video, give me a thumbs up, like, and subscribe, and hit that little bell button to be notified of the next video.